Hey Savages, we are continuing our journey in deep diving all of the edges in the game. This is part 2 of our background edges, so if you haven't seen the first part, go check that out. Especially we talk about our ranking system in the beginning. Play that funky music, Carl boy.
Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World.
Hey everyone, it's Carl with Eric at Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support and all that good stuff. Yes, this is part 2 of Background Edges for Savage Worlds, our 2025 look. We did it many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're taking another look at it and kind of putting them where we think they fall in the landscape of awesomeness to not so awesome. And we'll get right into it. But first, let's take a look at where we were at before. So let me bring that up. So here's what we've got currently in our S tier. Anything you want to mention before we jump right into the next item on our list?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can just. I mean, we shouldn't leave anything on the line. So maybe at the very end, you want to just like put stuff in, or we can do it now, I guess. I think that definitely. Let's just put improved arcane resistance. It just makes sense to keep it with arcane resistance. I think we're definitely going to move Berserk up to just in the C tier, right? I think when we were looking at it, it seemed like more of a flavor choice than anything, and it had a lot of complications with it. And we want it to be something, but just looking at it as a defensive edge, right? I think it does work. I mean, generally, you start accruing that fatigue after 5 rounds of combat, but if you're just going into combat and you're getting hit because you're a melee person and you get that +2 toughness and ignoring a wound penalty, it's not bad for that. I still think it's definitely C because there's a lot of stuff to consider with it, right? And you definitely need to build around it. It's not as universal as other combat edges, so I think that's where it's good. And then ambidextrous. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a B. I mean, it's like, I think with combat edges, we're going to have to look at things differently about whether like they fit the kind of style that you want and they kind of do what you want to do, right? And we know that dual wielding can be very powerful. And ambidextrous, for what it's supposed to be doing, it's like essential. I don't think it's not as powerful as two-fisted and everything, so I think that's good at B. So I think this is where we've landed, right? With,
I think we've kind of we recorded that show, sat on it, kind of molded over, and we came back, and here's what we're going to kind of reposition a little bit before we get back into. So we went in the first one, we went all the way through Brute, and so now the next one we're going to start with is Charismatic.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Yep, let's hit it.
So Charismatic, you get a free reroll on persuasion rolls. I mean, this one's pretty obvious. I mean, it's an A ranked edge. I mean, we do know that +2 would be the best bonus. But this one has the second best bonus on, just like alertness and notice, right? Like persuasion is one of those skills that you should be using all the time.
You use it a lot.
Completely all the time.
Yep.
So, getting a free roll, and it's not free rolls on a failure, so it's very powerful. You're going to be using this constantly. Persuasion rolls are just one of those skills that just are used all the time. So yeah, this is an A rank one. And I would even say that like, if you want to be a phase character, I mean, you need spirit of a D8 for this. So I think even just having a persuasion at a D8 and grabbing charismatic, like you're a face character, honestly. Yep. Like you're not like the best face. You could definitely invest more, but you could just like my character in Carl's game. I do have a +1 to persuasion from Cyberware. But I could have just easily, just have persuasion at a D8 and just have free rerolls, and I'm pretty good, right? You're just pretty good. So this is definitely an A rank one, and so let's do that. Yeah.
I think I don't think I have much.
You have anything to say about that?
No, I don't think there's much to add. I mean, it's a free reroll on a skill that's used a lot. So how can you go wrong on that? So we'll drop that right into
always
A.
a good option. Yeah. Yep. And there's no stipulations, right? Like attractive.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. There's no caveats to this one. It's all just good, straightforward, simple. So then the next one we get to is the Great Church Elan.
Here we go. Bring it home, Carl.
So what does Elan do? Well, Elan means that whenever you spend a Benny to re-roll a trait roll, now it's a trait roll, you get a +2 to the total. So you screw up a roll, you spend a Benny, you re-roll, you get a +2. It doesn't apply to damage rolls because, again, it's a trait roll. But how can you have anything quite as awesome as you spend a Benny, you get a +2. You're going to re-roll it anyway with your Benny, but now you get a +2. How fantastic is that? I don't know what more can somebody say other than it's an A tier, and it's one of my, what I call my S, if we're going to add that in.
It's your best in show, right?
That's my best in show. Yep, absolutely.
It's best in show. So, I mean, I don't know if we can put it in 2 places. I think we will do that. Yeah, it's so good. I mean, the Spirit of a D8, that is the big, like, hurdle, right? I mean,
sure.
People have to be kind of invested in probably a face or some type of Spirit-based caster usually. But Spirit's a good attribute anyways. The power of this edge is, you know, we get bennies. We start with a bunch of bennies. We're getting bennies throughout it, so we're using them. You're mostly using them on re-rolling, and usually use them on something that you really want to do. So this just makes you kind of better at everything, and that's why it is so key. I mean, it's just you can't really talk about how powerful it is and how useful it is. Now there is a little stipulations here when you see that it doesn't. It only applies to the re-roll. So if you have a lawn and then you use that benny and get a re-roll, like if your original roll was say a 7 and then you got a 6 or something on your reroll, which would become an 8, the 7 doesn't retroactively get that +2. I think some people sometimes get confused with that. So it's only for those rerolls. But yeah, I mean, clearly if Arcane Background wasn't mine, this would be my best in show as well, because it just is always a good fit for pretty much any character.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't go wrong. You're going to spend a Benny to reroll anyway. Why not get some benefits out of it? So even if you're like unskilled, that -2 penalty goes away, and now it's like you've got like a D4 in it. So it's just awesome.
And this was a kind of, it was a free option in my build. I have a build video called the Andoroto, which is a shapeshifting spy build. Like this was kind of a key edge just because of that, because you have to be good at so many things. So if you want to kind of make a jack of all trades character, this is also kind of essential, honestly, in my opinion. So
yeah, sure, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so cool. We go beyond one of the best in show, and we get to maybe not so much best in show.
Yeah, this one is rough. It's Fame. Now there's also
sorry.
Yeah. Let's actually put there's an upgraded one with this too called Famous. Here we go. So basically it doubles the normal fee when performing for pay. Okay. And then you can use your celebrity to add +1 to persuasion rolls. If the target is friendly and know who she is, a common knowledge roll modified by how likely the individual is to know the celebrity. So here we have another one that's like Attractive. Although Attractive gave you better bonuses, they gave you +1 on persuasion and performance. Interestingly enough, Fame does not give you a bonus for performance. It just gives you more money when you perform for pay. And this is not the whole thing. There's actually stipulation here with that you also are like, if you have the Fame edge, you know, it's kind of flavor, but it is, if the game master was being kind of a hard ass about it or looking at it raw, like you have obligations, right? You have to like go play shows in, that could be like out of screen narrative, but maybe it takes up some time. Like it kind of has this intrinsic, almost minor hindrance built into it. And then the whole bonus, the +1 persuasion, is if the target is friendly,
has to
right?
know you, yeah.
So that Attractive and Charismatic doesn't have that. And they have to know who you are, and a common knowledge roll modified by how likely the individual is to know the celebrity. And they even talk about this. It might be a popular bard known in a particular fiefdom, a minor rock star. So kind of a niche-y celebrity, right? It could be like a YouTube star or something. So you're not like Tom Cruise, right? You're kind of like somebody from maybe Dropout. I'm sure most of the people, nerds would know Dropout, or, from like Dimension 20 or something, right? So even if they're friendly to you, then the person has the game master doesn't even decide. They'll know you. They have to roll with maybe a bonus because they might know. So there's just all these hurdles to get this +1 on persuasion. So it is pretty rough in my opinion. Now the whole like performance, like the pay thing, like here is raising funds, right? So if you get if you get a success, it's 20%, and a raise is 30%. right? So it's like, what is that? I mean, the normal funds on a normal game is 500. So that's what, $100 extra, right? That's
cash money.
An extra 100. Like that's
$100 cash money.
That is like, you have such, it's such a pittance. I don't know. It just seems like you have such better ways to spend your resources. Now, Famous this is an interesting one where, you know, all the other ones were kind of a direct upgrade. I think Famous really actually then is a really good edge, you know, at this point, because you now get 5 times the normal fee when performing. So, you know, that is 20% times 5, right? That's going to be a lot more. But still, like, not crazy. And then you get the +2 persuasion nose. But, like, at this point, you're so famous, you are Tom Cruise, right? So they don't even have to roll. It's just like they probably know who you are, and you get this +2 persuasion. So now we're talking about like a really good bonus, right, Carl? Like at this point.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But it costs 2 edges to get there.
Right.
So,
right.
And then like the price is higher. You have more demands on your time. You have rivals, scandals. So I don't know.
Well, and this 5x normal fee for performing, I mean, if you truly are famous, I mean, these folks aren't. You're almost
getting comped.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I mean, it's really. It feels like this is something that would be more part of the setting, flavor, background. You know, your character is a famous person, which means they get certain. You know, like in some of the cyberpunk settings, they have. You know, your cost
like
of living.
Rock Boy, yeah.
Yeah, you know, what your cost of living is versus how much it's cost you and your style of living. It really feels like a famous person would have a significant living style that goes beyond, I get 5 times the funds when I'm performing, which is not a lot to start with. So, I don't know. It could be very flavorful, you know, if you're doing a Josie and the Pussycats kind of campaign, but the money means nothing for either of these. It really should be something
ultimately,
that the
money
Game
is
Master
nothing.
is bringing in, you know, so, yeah.
So this one's tricky for me. I like Fame for me is almost just a flavor edge, honestly. Like that has some, but like it can give you a +1, but that can just, it can really depend on your game, right? Like whether people know you or not. I mean, that is, the GM kind of has to work for it. Like I almost want to put Fame in the D category. Again, not because it's like so horrible, but just that it's more of a flavor choice than anything. And then Famous to me is almost like, I would almost say it's a B tier edge.
Sure.
But because it costs 2 edges to get to, I might want to put it into C. I don't know. Where do you land on this, Carl? Like it's kind of a difficult one to rate.
Well, Fame is, you know, I would say it's probably a D on its own, just as is. But Famous, I think you could start getting into the B category if you treat them independently. But if you're going to drop it because it's 2 edges to get there, but I mean, just on its own, it's getting in kind of the B area, you know. So if you take away the fact that it takes 2 edges to get there, so that's kind of how I look at it. Yeah,
we could leave it in B. I mean, it's kind of a weird to put them differently and. Like Famous, like it could be like you would say, the argument for A, but just because it has the 2 edges to get into, it has all these stipulations about all these demands on your time, and you know, I don't know. It's I think B is a good one because like I think it goes down from an A to a B because of those reasons.
All right, cool. So then the next one we have is going to be Fast Healer.
Yep, here we go. It's all you, Carl.
So Fast Healer is really simple, right? It's basically you get a +2 on your Vigor rolls for natural healing, and natural healing, instead of being 5 days, it's 3 days. So pretty straightforward. The +2 on Vigor rolls for natural healing is a good thing. Having the natural healing being every 3 days versus 5. The only issue is, I don't know. I've never. That off-screen time of 5 days versus 3 days, or 5 days that takes to do a natural healing roll, I don't really spend a lot of time measuring that very particularly. But if you are in a game where, as Gary Gygax says, a good calendar is necessary for a good game, then, you know, power to you. But +2 on the Vigor rolls for natural healing, not a bad thing. in and of itself. Obviously, it'd be cool if it was +2 on helping. When somebody's trying to heal you, you get a +2. But
Yes, yeah.
But go ahead. Yeah.
No. That's absolutely my kind of home rule with this. I mean, as you said, the +2 is a good bonus, but this is so niche. I mean, it's so just like sporadic. Because even if this has to be for a certain type of game, really. There's two things this is good for. I mean, there's one. If you are in a game that has regeneration, I'll just say that right now, it comes much better. If you're a character that relies on slow or fast regeneration, this can then be a game changer because you're getting +2 on natural healing rolls, right? So like a superhero game, this can be really, really good if you take regeneration, right? You just forget about the 3 days to 5, whatever. I've seen sometimes game masters will like almost give you a free level of regeneration if you have this, right? Because you're already kind of doing that. But that +2 then is really good because you're making natural healing rolls, right? Or if you have some type of item that allows you to make natural healing rolls quicker. But also it has to just be in a game where that's a thing where you don't have a healer in the group, where like what type of game, like so many of these games, we have healing, we have magical healing, we have a skilled healer. In the sci-fi game we're playing now, we have a med bed, right? Like, which could be a natural healing roll, but still, like, how many times are you getting wounded? Like, this really has to be in a kind of, survivalist-y, like, 30, medieval,
or
like
modern,
low magic, no magic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Any kind of modern setting that doesn't have, it's the magic part of it, right? If there's not arcane backgrounds and you do have a little more grittier thing where, you're a cop and if you get hurt, yep, you're going to be in a hospital for a while. But even in those situations, your chances are you're going to fast forward through the hospital scene until he's healed, right? You're not going to.
Or somebody can heal you with skills, right?
Yeah.
Or like, this is another hard one to rate. Like, I don't know. I almost want to say D, but like, because it just natural healing comes up so rarely in most Savage Worlds games I've ever played. Like, I have rarely seen people actually having to take a week and do that.
But in the comments,
the bonuses are good.
Tell us if you do that. So
yes, please. I mean, there definitely is certain settings, I would say, right? But and very more pulpy stuff, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, where would you even place this, Carl? Honestly, like I said, there can be really powerful reasons for this. If you have any other way to get natural healing rolls, this then becomes a B or an A, especially if you're like relying on it to be like, this is how I kind of deal with getting hit, right? I don't have super high toughness, but I can regenerate in some way. Or we have like stim packs if we're playing like my Savage Fallout, I have stim packs giving you natural healing rolls, if that makes sense. So things like that, this becomes much better, right? So I don't know, where do you want to
but in your definition, right? If it's niche-y,
let's bring it up.
I can bring that up. So.
Yeah, niche effects, but strongly specific builds is C. I mean, it's.
So I'd call it
just
a
that
C.
it's so niche, but yeah, I think C is a good place for it. I'm definitely kind of going to put it with Brute. We'll just put it down here. There we go. Because it just has like, you really have to be in that specific. You really, really, really have to be in that specific type of game, right? So.
Yeah. That has the natural healing being a thing that gets rolled has to be a thing. If it's a thing, then it might be useful. But if it's magical healing, and rarely do you have anybody get past the golden hour to have to do natural healing, then it's not really all that useful, obviously. So, okay, let's take a look at our next one, which is fleet-footed.
Fleet-footed. You increase your pace by 2, and your running die increases 1 step from a D6 to a D8. So yeah, I mean, this is just number one. This is universally useful, right?
Yep,
I mean, it's universally useful. The effects are good. I'll say that. To me, this is a B ranked one, just because even though it has good effects and pace is good for most people, right? We have to think for melee characters, it's very important because you want to get to right. You need to get to the person. The target, right? So you need pace, and pace can be very important. Some game masters, if you're doing it narratively, like if it's theater of the mind, obviously that's not as big of a deal. If they just rely on very small maps, it's not as big of a deal. But pace is good for everybody. Pace is good for people who need to get behind cover, who want to get into advantageous positions, who want to get away from people. The only thing I'll say, Carl, is that I just see it kind of rarely getting taken because there's usually a better option, right? Like, I could take fleet-footed, although it is a background edge, but Brawny is just more powerful, and Frenzy, if you were just talking about later, is just more powerful, or Trademark Weapon is just like for melee builds especially, there's just often better options. So I think that for melee, this is definitely really important. I think you should take it at some point if your game master allows it. For other characters, I would say that if positioning is really important, if you are playing like my sniper build or something, you need to get into, if you're not relying on stealth necessarily, but you need to get into advantageous positions, right? Or you need to get behind cover because you're kind of weak. This can definitely help. Now, if you are in a game with powers, I'll say, speed is the best buff in the game, hands down. And any arcane background who doesn't take speed, like you're kind of like, if somebody has speed in the game, then this definitely loses a lot of efficacy because that just blows this completely out of the water. But it still is useful even with that. So I don't know. To me, this is B. What is your take on fleet-footed?
So I think movement is so important in Savage Worlds because you have things where if you're getting into combat and you want to get out of combat, that's where things like edges like extraction. But being able to stay ahead of somebody where they've got a D6 or they've got they've got a pace of 6 and you've got a pace of 8, you control your destiny. Now, remember, we also have our house rule where you get the max run die.
Yes.
So a D6 to a D8, when you're talking maximum that every time, that's a big deal. So obviously that's house rule kind of that we use. So movement, it's key. I absolutely agree that if you've got arcane backgrounds and you've got those powers in effect, but on its own, I think that this is a good edge because movement is such a key thing from a combat tactics standpoint. So I will give it a B as well, but B is good. Now, B is not a bad thing. We have so many
B
that
is
are
good.
in C.
It's more that it's like the effects aren't so insane. Like you said, the +2 is good, but it's on a crazy pace increase. And without that house rule, honestly, the D6 to a D8 running die is really not that big of a deal. Like, of course, you have the higher chance of getting a higher amount, but it's just so random to rely on that with movement. I almost wish fleet-footed was like +2 pace and you take maximum run die, and there was like other ways to get increased run die. You know what I mean? Like that would be a nice option. That would make it much more powerful. But because of that, it definitely to me feels like a B.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, let's take a look at the standings here. All right. Then
we got Linguist.
Linguist. All right. Am I up?
Can I actually take this one? Because I have
go ahead. Rock on.
Interesting thoughts.
Rock on.
Okay, so Linguist, you start your game with half your smarts die and different language skills of your choice at D6. Okay, so there's a lot to go through here, actually, surprisingly. But languages, right, Carl, can either be big or they can be non-existent. So there's definitely a nichiness to this, right? And even in games where there might be a lot of languages, it's the game master doesn't always take advantage of that, right? Whether that's like, just not letting it be a thing. So this is definitely better for in science fiction games that don't have like universal translators. This can be a really big deal if you have aliens, right? In kind of globe-trotting games like really anything like, I would say like, kind of like medieval on to like pre-90s, right, where we don't have like smartphones with like translation, then this is the bigger deal if you have something that's like traveling to different places, right? The reason why this is still not just like a complete flavor thing or that niche is that when you look at this, like at the requirements are at least a smarts D6, right? So you at least have a smarts of a D6. Now, normally when you want to learn a language, it's like any other skill. So if English is kind of the normal language, but you want to pick up Spanish, it costs a skill point to get a D4 in Spanish. And that's like, you're barely no hablo mucho español or something, right? You like know barely any Spanish. So when you just look at it as that way, you're getting a huge, you're just netting a lot of extra skills. Like, now they are language skills, but with just a D6 in smarts, you are getting 3 skills at D6. Right? We know that 2 skill points is worth an edge. So you're netting 4 extra skill points, right, Carl? Do you understand what I'm saying?
But they're very much in a very specific area, right?
They are in a very specific area, 100%. But you are, I mean, you are getting a bunch of extra skills. I mean, that's just, it is worth skill points to take languages, so you are getting a lot of other skills. And this just increases if you have better smarts. I mean, if you probably took Linguist, you probably are a smarts-based character. So if you have a D8, it just gets better, right? Now you have a net of 6 skills, right? So it is have a very nichiness, right, Carl? But I do think that its potency is there. Now, there's a couple of things like, so here is like if you see the language skill here, like, so yeah, D4, you can read and write speak common phrases. D6 is where you can just carry on normal conversations, right? Now, in games where there is multiple languages, generally your GM might go with this setting rule, the multiple language setting rule. Which basically everybody gets a linguist edge for free, and somebody who wants to take the linguist edge again gets their full smarts die. So it still has a huge increase. So yeah, that's my thought. So where I'm landing with this, Carl, is C, because while it is very, very specific to a specific type of game and a specific type of game master, I guess, there is definitely genres where this is useful, and it's more just the amount of free stuff, of extra stuff you get from me. So I don't know, what is your take on that with all the things I said?
Basically it comes down to if you've got a campaign where languages matter, and you're not going to just kind of hand wave the communication gap between them,
yeah.
and it's going to be interesting to have that language gap and communication gap in the campaign, like your ancient Egyptian archaeology kind of thing, where having somebody who can speak ancient Coptic is big deal, and so that's makes sense for a linguist kind of thing. So any of that kind of stuff is, like you said, globetrotting. But as many campaigns, worlds, that just gets hand waved away, and so it's not really that interesting. Even if the character takes linguists and has languages, suddenly everybody kind of has common in the Pathfinder kind of world. Everybody's got common, so it's not really that important. But for a modern day game where you're a secret agent working, across the globe, man, this could be very, very fun. Like something where you're, again, archaeology, and there's mysteries that you're trying to solve, that your being a linguist and having language skills in different areas could be, then it's awesome. So or
you're a face character, right?
Yeah. So that puts you right in the middle. Bonuses. Right. So it puts you right in the middle of how useful this can be, which is to what you said, AC. Right. It's right in the middle.
There's two other stipulations I think we should talk about here. I think, for one, like something that we've done in our games when languages were a thing, is that I think it should, if you are dealing with like ancient languages and all that stuff, we gave a bonus to academics to like decipher new languages. Mm-hmm. That's just something that's as a house rule that I think it's good. And one thing also, that if somebody does take this and you have powers, one of our big things is, we really don't like the unlock power. And we really don't like do you remember the name of the power that allows you to like just know all languages?
Oh,
right, those are
we don't like that.
Yeah,
one.
but there's that power, right? That so if somebody does take this and you're in a game with powers, as a game master, I definitely recommend just get rid of that power, honestly, because it's going to make the person who invested in this and investing in languages feel like, well, okay, they just took one power and they're just do everything that I can do better. Like that just kind of sucks, right?
Right.
Maybe keep it as like a ritual that they have to like a scroll that is like a consumable, but that's just another thing I need to throw in there. So I think, right, you agree with me, I think, on those 2 points.
Absolutely agree with you.
Cool.
Yep.
So we're good at C here, right?
Yep. Sounds like C is where it's
getting
an average.
Put it back here again. We'll put it down there.
No, is that good to be back down there, or is that bad?
I'm
losing track.
It's not bad. It's just like those are just like kind of extreme C's, if that makes sense. They're just kind of, you really have to be they're very specific C's. They're SCs, I guess.
C's, the shining C's. Okay, got it.
We're going C's within C's. That's true.
Okay.
Cool.
And so the next one we have is luck and great luck.
All right, take it away, Carl.
Well, there's not much to say about this. I mean, this literally is, you get an extra Benny at the beginning of a game session. Congratulations, you! Yay! And it's good. And it doesn't have any requirements. You just take it. And now you get an extra Benny. Bennies are useful. So how can you go wrong? It's just good.
Exactly. It's universally useful for literally every single Savage Worlds game. There's never... it's basically the most universal edge there is, honestly. Like, Charismatic. Like maybe there's a game that they don't really do social stuff. It's mostly combat. Luck is literally the most universal edge there is. We're always getting bennies.
Now, the only caveat,
we do get a lot of bennies.
Yeah, the only caveat, that's what I was going to say. The only caveat is if you're in a game where the bennies flow like water, having an extra one at the beginning's maybe not as cool, but my games typically, the bennies maybe don't flow as much as that, and so having luck or great luck would be a great thing, especially if you get edges where you can share them with your compatriots. I always forget the name of the edge.
Yeah.
And
common bonds.
Common bond and things like that. Then it's really nice to start off with a couple of extras that you have just in your pocket to use right away if you had to.
Yeah. Anytime if you have bennies to spend as an extra resource, like you said with Common Bond, or like the Bard Edge from Savage Pathfinder, right? Inspire Heroics. It's absolutely essential now, and like bennies are just but even if you do get a lot of bennies, right? Having an extra benny is never bad. Like that just allows you to spend more. And something that I think I talked about in this video before, like even for arcane background characters, right? I often recommend like after you take in the PowerPoint Edge, always take the PowerPoint Edge first. But even before, I think at this point in time, what I think optimally, it's better to take luck or great luck before you take channeling or concentration. Like I think I have them here. So like, oops. There we go. Like both channeling and concentration, right, give you a way of like saving power points. But as I said before in maybe other videos too, like for channeling or concentration to beat luck, because we know that luck equals 5 power points, right? You'd have to use in a session, you'd have to get a raise on a power 6 times, right? Or you'd have to have 6 times that you spend power points to increase a duration of a power. Now, concentration has if you're in a lot of buffing powers where it's like per person, then that's different, right? But just it's often to look at like for arcane background characters, take luck before one of these. It might be a better option for you, and it has all the flexibility of doing other stuff. So.
Yeah, you can use it for anything.
Right, where do you want to put it? I think I know, but where do you want to put both of them?
I think it should be an A. I think
100%. Whoops. I don't know what I did to it. Here we go. Let's try again. Here we go. Luck. Okay. And great luck.
And great luck. It's even
there
great.
We go.
There we go. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, now continuing with the generally useful edges, background edges. So let's hit quick.
All right, quick. So this is one of, I guess you would say it's one of 3 or 4 initiative edges. I mean, there's also like a hindrance that deals with initiative, but quick is the agility one. Basically, when you are dealt an action card of 5 or lower, you can discard it and draw again, and you just keep doing that until you get a card that's higher than 5. Again, this is you may do it. If you liked your card, you can keep it for some reason. Now, if you have the level-headed edge, you first draw the additional card from level-headed, and then if the card that you chose is 5 or less, then you can get a new replacement, and then you keep drawing that again until it's 6 or higher. Now, I would say that quick. First of all, initiative edges are very, very good. Mm-hmm. In a game where initiative's not happening a lot, then it's obviously not as good. But generally, they're very good. Now, quick is just not as good as level-headed in its efficacy, like because you are right. Chances are you're getting a higher than a 5 card. Like you have better chances of getting a 6 or higher, right? And if you get a 6, it sucks when you have quick. It just sucks, right? So it definitely pairs well with level-headed, but the requirements of agility D8 or smart of a D8 is often hard for a character to have both, because usually you kind of lean in one of the directions. So level-headed is generally a better initiative edge for what it does. And there's a lot more builds you can do with it. Like you can do stuff like using hesitant, or I forget what it's called, where you can choose to take a lower card and get more like stuff off of multi-action penalties. Now the good thing about quick though that level-headed doesn't. Now level-headed specifically says it's for combat, right? Quick doesn't have that stipulation. It just says action card. So your game master could rule it differently, but technically, like you can use quick in chases, you can use quick in dramatic tasks, right? It's just an action card, right, Carl? So that is an advantage that quick has over level-headed. So, I mean, for me, quick is personally a B-ranked one. I think it's It's just that it doesn't trigger. Level-headed will always trigger, right? Quick will just not trigger as much as you want it to, but you can pair it with other stuff to happen more often. So that's where I land with it, right? What is your take on it?
Well, the basic level-headed, you always get a second card, regardless of how big it is, right? So quick, there is a threshold, and it's 5, and that's not very, like you said, not very difficult. It's different than if it was a threshold of like a 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
The threshold of 5 is not difficult to get above, and you might have a 6, 7, or 8, and that's not that great. But let's consider this is an agility based one versus smarts. And as you said, unless you do builds where you're really taking the every time you hit a rank, you're going to take attribute change so that you can build yourself up. If you had a good agility, but now you're going to build yourself up to have a good smart, so now you can take level-headed. Most of my builds, I build towards trying to get to level-headed, and I don't normally take quick. Generally.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even though I might have an agility D8 because it's a shooter or something, I'm still spending some things to get to the point where I have a smarts big enough to get level-headed.
But that is you. I think that like out of all the different skills, right, agility is one of the most common attributes because so many combat skills
everything uses
rely on all the combat skills rely on it. Stealth, all that stuff. Smarts is like pretty generally pretty specific to a lore type of character. So does somebody have a D8 in smarts? They have to be like the nerd, right? Or a smarts-based caster. There could be the survivalist, but even a survivalist is probably going to want to just keep it at a D6 and just spend the extra points for survival. So I just think quick is just as much more easier to access for the majority of characters. I think for me, sometimes I build toward level-headed, but honestly, usually there's edges for me that I want to take. So if I don't have a character that is a smarts-based character, I probably at some point will take quick. Because I'm just not going to spend the resources on level-headed.
Well, and I guess that's a way of saying at some point you'll take quick. So it's definitely not something that's like, well, I'm salivating to get that under my belt right away, right?
But for sure. But it is so generic, right? And it is a pretty good effect because you're cutting out the kind of bottom of it. So to me, it's still a B. I don't know. Did you think it is C or?
No, I think B is good. I'm with you on the B for sure. All right, cool.
And if you are building a kind of initiative-based character, like you're relying on one of the initiative edges that give you like double damage or something else like that, or my sniper builds really had to utilize all the initiative edges because of that, and you wanted to go first anyways because you want to be on hold, then you do want to take both of them. But I still think if you can, level-headed is definitely the one you take first, right? If you can, although it is seasoned, but
you have to wait till seasoned to get it right. So
all right, let's put this bad boy in B. Here we go. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Now comes very important.
Okay, here we go.
The most important ones you can get behind fame and famous, right?
You know what? Yeah, Carl, we're in tune with this. Okay, rich and filthy rich. Again, these. Okay, so rich gives you 3 times the normal starting funds for the setting, and then it gives you $150,000 annual salary. Very rich gives you 5 times the normal starting funds and 500,000. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So again, the normal starting funds is 500. For something like fantasy or Savage Pathfinder, it might often be 300. And then science fiction, you start with 1,000, right? 1,000. But both Fantasy Companion and Science Fiction, as we'll see, has a kind of better version of this, because like 3 times the normal starting funds, right? We're talking about what? That's 1,500. I mean, it can buy you a much better gun, The only thing with me is that, like, you're spending an edge. You're spending a permanent kind of, you only get this once, right? And it's gone. Money comes and goes, man. Like, you're going to get money. You're going to hopefully be able to buy a higher gear. I think in the cases with this, if you're in a game where gear is going to be very hard to come by, if you're in some type of post-apocalypse setting, right, or something like that where scarcity is an issue, then this is definitely something that's optimal for builds. It can be, right, because guns, especially your weapon, can be the big buy here, right, if we're just talking about normal Savage Worlds campaigns. But like, this isn't going to get you a magic item. It's not going to get you a vehicle. It's not going to get you cybernetics, right? It's just too low for those things. Now, the annual salary, I don't know. Carl, have you ever seen this in any type of fruition? Or like, I have never seen somebody have an annual salary that did anything. I don't know. Have you ever seen somebody take this and that been a thing?
Well, but I've had campaigns where the annual salary meant something, but it wasn't because they took rich. It was just, the players had a salary. They were working as beat cops or whatever, and so they made money. And so if they needed something that was personal, it was the question is, well, within your means, it's like, oh, I need a laptop. Well, you make good money, you can buy a laptop. Okay, fine. It's like, why am I arguing about that? So I don't know, but having it be because 150,000, they'd say, well, I'm making 150,000 a year. I just wait a month, and I've already got more than my starting. If I just wait a month, I'll get 15K approximately, right? I'll get around 12K or whatever, and so, well, that 12K, I can buy whatever I want now, right? So forget the 1,500. So it doesn't make sense. You have to flavor it. It's like you just can't. Anyway, I think just stating that here is kind of a problem.
Definitely. I agree. I mean, like, there is power here, there is potency here, but it can be very niche. It's weird for the game master. It has to be the right type of game. So to me, these again are almost flavor choices. Now you look at very rich, filthy rich, and you're like, well, that's a lot more money, right? 500,000 5 times, but that's 2 edges. Can you imagine spending 2 edges at the beginning just to have 2,500? Like, that is just not worth it as far as what you're getting for a power standpoint. So I mean, people might disagree in the comments. Personally, to me, these are more of a flavor choice, I think. I think if you took this, like you said, you can kind of use your money as like influence. You might, again, kind of like aristocrat, right? Like you're in those circles. Maybe you have like more connections. So to me, this is almost more of a flavor choice. And it's just like you said, it's so weird for the game master. So for me, these are D. I don't know. Do you disagree with that, Carl?
They're D's. Yeah,
okay.
I agree. They're D's. Yep.
If people in the comments, I am like really, really genuinely curious to hear about your experience with Rich and Filthy Rich. Like, please tell us if you've had, if it's been really useful to you as far as the salary, or as a game master, how you've dealt with it. Like, it's just such a weird edge that puts that kind of stipulation there. So, yeah.
So
there's Rich, and then there's
Filthy Rich.
Filthy Rich.
Okay. Money.
There we go. All right.
Well, that hits all of the basic, the core ones. But as a little extra taste, do we want to pull out a couple of extra ones from the
let's do fantasy sci-fi.
companion?
We're going through the main companions. Let's do it.
Okay, let's hit it. Which one do you want to hit first?
We're starting with Chosen.
Is that fantasy?
Do you want me to read it?
Is that fantasy or?
Yes, we're in fantasy. Starting with fantasy, we're starting with Chosen. So here's another weird one. We'll go through it. So basically, you are the chosen one. You are destined for greatness. One who will, with the help of her boon companions, do great things. So there's a lot here, but when the chosen spends conviction that lasts until the end of the encounter without having to maintain it with bennies. Now, there's some downsides here. You automatically get the enemy major hindrance. And you have it says worse, she has a mark of some sort that can't be removed, no matter how much she tries, like a tattoo, birthmark, 6-finger, weird pupils, and you just can't cover it up. People know that you're the chosen one. So this one, like, okay, if we just look at it from a power standpoint, right? Now, in fantasy and like Savage Pathfinder, you do get conviction more often. I mean, conviction is just a rule in that. It's not like an optional rule that it is in just normal Savage world. So it should be a thing. So obviously you have to have conviction for this to be worth anything. And you really, for this to be worth it, your game master has to be giving them out more than just like once per 20 sessions, right? And you have to have the downtime activity where you can get conviction. So, but even if you have, say, a pool of 2 or 3 and that kind of uses, you're basically saving your conviction for these big battles, right? And then it is powerful. I mean, conviction gives you a D6 on all of your rolls, like trait rolls and damage. right, that explodes, which is gigantic, and then normally it only lasts for a round. This just enables you to use it for the whole combat. So, that could be a lot of free bennies, basically.
Right.
So a very, very powerful option in the right circumstances, and you definitely want to kind of save your conviction for these big battles, right? Not just for like, oh, I want to just kind of use it in the social conflict. No, you're using this for when you're kind of facing a mini boss. The thing where I don't like about it, besides the, you're getting a major hindrance, this is something again that like feels like the game master should just kind of do anyway. Like you are the chosen one, or the group is the chosen one. I think it sets up a weird dynamic that if somebody just decides to take this, right? And then all of a sudden they're the chosen one and everybody else is like, what are we, just chumps? You know what I mean? Like, talk about... So you definitely have, like, it's just a weird dynamic, and you definitely want to talk about it with your game master, talk about it with other party members, right, first. I don't know, like, would you just allow this freely with anybody? Or would you kind of want to work this in? Or what's your take as a game master here, Carl?
I mean, any chosen stuff really is based on, again, the flavor of the campaign and what... and you're working with the players to say, oh, this makes sense that, there's one individual who's a little bit more in the spotlight than some of the others. And people are okay with that. Like that's fine. But in general, it's kind of background flavor stuff. You're chosen and giving a mechanical advantage to it, or adding mechanics to it in the sense of an edge. I don't know if that's necessary, but I mean, I like what it does as far as the mechanics of it are cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it does, like, it would be weird as a game master for me to like, okay, well, that has to be part of the game, or I'd want the whole group to be part of it, or to have all their special thing. I don't know. It's something weird that's free. So, while it does have some potent effects, although there is a lot of, conviction has to be a thing that is handed out, or you're able to get it. So if you do choose this, you want to be spending your downtime just on getting conviction basically all the time. So for me, it still lands in the C rank because it's so niche, and its power is, while good, you're not going to even still be using it all the time. It's not like every combat you get a bonus, right? You're saving your convictions for these big battles. So for me, it lands on C, something that's pretty niche and the power isn't quite there enough. Is that...
I won't disagree with you.
Okay. And again, talk about it. If you are looking at this, like, I don't know, talk about it with your game master and your other players first, like 100%.
Yeah, this is definitely a session zero kind of conversation to have.
Consider taking it. All right, here we go. Next one.
Do you want to take that one too?
Sure.
Kind of in the middle
We
of
got
trying to
Fey
get
Blood.
something up here.
Now, this one was ripped out of the elves and half-elves from Savage Pathfinder. So they even say elves, half-elves, and certain Fey are often resistant to hostile magics. Those with some amount of it in their blood get a free reroll when resisting enemy powers and spell-like effects. So here we have kind of another arcane resistance kind of adjacent one. Now, when we're looking at these, obviously you're using the fantasy book. So presumably you're playing a fantasy game, which is going to have a lot more powers and a lot more creatures with spell-like effects, right? Spell-like effects is even a dragon's breath, a Medusa's gaze, right? These are all spell-like effects. They would be, I would think, right, Carl, to be considered a spell-like effect. So now the only problem here is that it specifically says resisting. So unlike arcane protection, right, which we put as a C ranked one because of how niche it is. Now in a fantasy game, I think arcane resistance probably would be better.
Yeah, I
think Fey Blood almost. Like it, because resisting. So when you look at powers, there's a lot of powers that, there's some powers that are opposed, right? They'll say like something like, I think Puppet is opposed, right? And there's some other powers that are opposed where you roll and then the defender rolls, right? And whoever, if you get over what they rolled, then you succeeded, right? That's an opposed power. This doesn't count technically. I mean, it's weird with Savage Worlds with their words. It's not always clear, but there's a very clear oppose roll, resisting, and recovering, right? But you could make the argument that resisting counts for an opposed roll, right, Carl? I think a generous GM would allow that. But a lot of powers are not resisted, they're recovered from. So something like Entangle, right? Or something like, there's a lot of powers that like the person cast their skill, they activate their power, and if they get a success, it just happens, right? Like blind is a very powerful debuff. You cast it, that person's blinded. Now on their turn, they get a free spirit roll to recover from that, but that's not resisting,
Right.
So again, a generous game master might allow that in this case, but really this is for, powers that are like, the person casts it successfully, and then you have to roll to not have it happen to you, like the stun power, I believe.
Right.
Stun power both is resisting and a recoverable power, right? The person initially has to roll to not get stunned. That's why, even though stunning is a bigger effect than Entangle is is just a better power, because it will just happen on the person without them, there's no resisting it. So it's a free reroll. I definitely think here that, in a spell like it is very also thematic to elves and Fey, although, a human could take this to saying they have Fey in their blood. Now, the difference between this and Arcane Resistance is this also affects spell-like effects, so you are getting, again, the Dragon's Breath wouldn't count because you're not resisting it, but something like, maybe they'll give it to you for evasion, I don't know. Something maybe like a Medusa's Gaze would work, so it is kind of all over the place. I don't know, it's not D. I think we'll put this, I think for me this is C, because it's just not as broad as, honestly, Arcane Resistance. And in a fantasy game, Arcane Resistance to me would up to a B, probably, if there's a lot of spellcasters being involved. So I don't know. This to me is C. It doesn't quite drop it down to D for me. What is your take, Carl?
So I haven't had a opportunity in a campaign where this really was one.
You have. Hold on, Carl.
Did you take Fey Blood?
I didn't take Fey Blood, but in our Savage Pathfinder game, we had a shit ton of elves. Remember, elves were rare.
Oh, that's true.
Had
we had elves.
2 elves and a half elf. So technically, they all had it. Whether you remember them ever using it, I think I had to remind them at once. Right, so you have had experience with 3 of your players having this.
Obviously, they did not take advantage of their resistant all that often. Then apparently, so
or it doesn't just come up that much. So it is pretty niche, right?
Yeah. So I guess I guess in that situation, I was going to give it a little lower, but it sounds like from a Pathfinder standpoint,
maybe it is D. Honestly, maybe it could be D if that's what you're thinking. Because we did play a Savage Pathfinder game, and there was powers, there was creatures, right? I think maybe it came up one time somebody actually got to use it, and maybe they forgot about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what do you think? C or D, I guess?
We're not doing lines anymore, so I guess we'll...
I don't know. For now, maybe
I'll let you... you're doing the copy-pasting, so you get the final say. What are you
I think here is if you're in a game with a ton of creatures, I don't know. It really is because I just think take Arcane Resistance. It's not bad, and in D... It's just more flavor that you're Fey. But again, if you're playing this raw, it's just a lot of powers, and even, creature abilities are just not going to actually
trigger it,
yeah. Right? So I think we're at D. Again, hit us up in the comments if you've had experience with it. But I think we'll just, because of Arcane Resistance, then yeah. Here we go.
Okay, now we got Favored Enemy.
Now this one was pulled out of the Ranger in Savage Pathfinder.
Okay. Yeah, because the Savage Pathfinder had laid the framework for a lot of these that ended up in the Fantasy Companion. So this one is you have a type of enemy that's kind of, it says native to your homeland or backstory, but I mean essentially what it comes down to is there's a type of creature, and it gives you some examples like undead, fey, demons, constructs, giants, animals. So you have to work on figuring out what exactly it means to have exactly a type of enemy, what a type means. But what you get is a free reroll for tracking or for attacking that type of creature or being or what have you. And what's interesting is you could take the edge a couple of times if you've got different creatures you want or creature types that you want to deal with. So this is useful, but it's got a big, huge caveat that, again, your game master has to know that you are your favorite enemy is undead. Okay, then you need to have undead in the game. And if your game doesn't have that much undead, or undead is a thing later in the campaign, or undead is an early thing and then it goes away because some other more cosmic horror comes to fruition, it'd be less than powerful. And some of these things like demons, that's going to be a tough one early on. So it really that the fact that you have to have those part of the game, and the game master needs to bring them to bear, that's what brings it down a notch to me. Because that free reroll is great, but it's a little too particular, and you have to, again, as a game master, play into that with your player, and hopefully you guys work together to make sure a favorite enemy is something that's going to make sense in the campaign.
100%. I mean, we talked about this in our Savage Pathfinder review of the Ranger, where, you know, I didn't like this in the Ranger because they did a good job of doing the Pathfinder 1E version. I just like the kind of 2E version. I mean, Rangers aren't that good in 2E, but I like the kind of more universal approach because like you said, this can be either, you know, wildly ineffective or wildly powerful. I mean, you know, generally games do have a theme. So if you are in a game that is, right, you're fighting undead mostly. I mean, and that's kind of the overall, that the Lich is the big bad guy, right? And there's just undead everywhere. Then obviously, if you have undead for a favorite enemy, this is very powerful, right? It's a free reroll on attacks, not on a failed attack, just on an attack. So you can go for that raise, right? You can do all those things. So that is very powerful. The tracking is cool. There's a lot of theme here, but like, you know, I don't know, right? Even in that case, like trademark weapon gives you a +1 on your trademark on your like, you know, weapon that you have, and that's going to be universal for all the things that you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Now this has the advantage of if you are somebody who kind of switch hits or like uses multiple weapon types, like, you know, maybe like a 2-hander or 1-hander, or you do something like a bow and a throwing weapon, or, you know, a sword and a throwing axes, whatever, then favorite enemy kind of applies to all of that. So that is a little bonus as far as trademark weapon, but generally trademark weapon is still the kind of more powerful option to choose, right? But so, yeah, this one's weird. I mean, I almost like it here more than the Ranger because it's open, right? And you can just kind of decide when you want it. Now, Ranger had the advantage of, because they have those edge trees, there was one that gave you, you know, you could take an edge and just get another favored enemy and another favorite terrain for one edge, right? They don't have that in fantasy. There's obviously, because there's no like class edges. So I don't know. To me, this is still, even though that it's so niche and it can be wildly inconsistent, for me, this is still a C rank one because, you know, in the right circumstances, it can be very, very powerful. And, you know, it does kind of put the onus on your game master to do that. But, you know, again, talk to your game master beforehand. Like, are undead going to be a thing? I mean, if you want it for flavor, of course, great. It is very flavorful. But then your game master, you just tell your game master it's going to be, and they're going to have to, you know, they're going to have to put this in at some point, some type of Fey, some type of giants, whatever. And obviously there's no humanoids, so you have to kind of specifically pick elves and dwarves, which is just that's weird, right? Like, that's just like, you're just kind of a psychopath at that point. Or if you're like, your people just fought the dwarves, right, a lot, then I guess that's a thing. So, but then you have to like want to kill dwarves a lot in your setting. So I don't know. You know, humans could always be a good one if you have a lot of humans or something. But
my favorite enemy is humans, and I'm a human. That seems like a little bit of a cop out, but
I mean, if you fought a bunch of humans and you know how to kill humans, I guess that can be a thing. So, I mean, where do you put this? Like, I still think it's a C rank because it can be very powerful if you think about it. I don't think it drops into D where it's so right. The power is good when it pops off, even though it's pretty niche.
Yeah, I think if you're in a campaign. Again, this is where we get the niche part of it. If you're in a campaign where these favorite enemies are a thing, like you're playing Weird West, and so undead is a thing, and undead is then you're talking as a B power kind of thing. But it is niche because even in like Deadlands, you're not always out in, you know, the areas with the undead and the Badlands and stuff. Sometimes you're just against regular people. And so then it's completely useless. So, so I think I'm with you on it. Just call it a C.
And again, this first trademark weapon or some other one, if who does multiple types, especially multiple skills, right? Like if you took the Brute Edge and you are in a grappling, I guess that's still athletics. But if you know, it's still different weapons, right? Or you take a, you know, sword and axes or whatever, then this has some more efficacy to it if it's like a common enough enemy, right? You're getting this bonus over all those different weapon types and different skills. So yeah. Okay.
Continuing on, our
then we have the other part of the Ranger is the favorite terrain. So favorite terrain, you need a survival of D6. You choose a terrain type. And then you basically get a free reroll on survival and notice rolls, just in general. So, we're getting kind of a similar survival theme there for the tracking, though that was specifically tracking. This is all survival rolls and notice rolls, which is a big one, right? You also get to draw an additional action card for initiative, much like Level-Headed. And this has a much lower buy-in than Level-Headed, obviously. It's survival of D6, which is a smart skill, but, still not smarts of D8, right? And this combines with all the other kind of initiative edges, and you can take this many different times. And so this is obviously very, very similar to the Favorite Enemy, right? Where it can be really, really good. You're getting rerolls on notice rolls. The survival rolls is just okay, but you're getting those rerolls on notice rolls. You're getting, when you want to track, you're getting another initiative card that you can take this at Novice, which is sooner than Level-Headed, has a lower buy-in than Level-Headed, right? So those are all good things, but it's, very specific to a terrain type. But, if you're in a game like, the game, the D&D game that takes place all in the Frost, right? Amazing, Arctic. If you're just mostly in, a plains or a swamp, or it's a city game, right? Most of your game takes place in one city, like Baldur's Gate or something. Then urban becomes amazing, right? It becomes amazing. Or you're a bounty hunter for people. So urban is a really good one. Unless you're in like a survivalist game, then obviously urban is one that's always going to be kind of good, right? The other ones are kind of specific to what kind of game you're playing, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that much like Favored Enemy, this is definitely it's still a C rank because, it can be useful if you're, but just definitely talk to your game master beforehand. Like if you're never going to the Arctic, right? If that's never going to happen, then obviously don't take this, even if it's part of your background. You're just, just take survival, and that can represent you as being a survivalist, that you grew up in the Arctic. You just don't need this one, right? It has to be applicable really to make sense. So
I think the terrain type, the examples they give are too, the variety, or that's like Arctic may not be something that's a big deal, but then they say urban. What campaign will not have at some point you in a city? So that one's, you're going to have, it's going to be very, very useful to you, especially if you've got you're visiting cities all the time. Underground, the Underdark, you're doing dungeon delving, very cool. But jungle, I don't know. I mean, it really would be based on whether that's kind of the area you're dealing with. So you really, again, have to talk to the game master and make sure that the stuff makes sense. But absolutely, an additional action card is just fantastic at Novice.
At Novice. And again, much like Quick, it doesn't say for combat. It just says action card for initiative. So that enables you to have this for chases, right? This enables you to have it for dramatic tasks. So I definitely think the efficacy is there. So for me, again, this is the C-ranked one, right? I don't know where you land, but I think...
this is probably right in the same neighborhood as the other favorite. We're right in
Favorite
the C.
Enemy.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Now, honestly, this last one in the Fantasy Companion is one of my least favorites. Heirloom. So, Heirloom, this basically represents that you get a magic item. There's a list, and you can pull them up, but 10,000 gold pieces, one magic item. It says it can be a consumable and destroyed.
Don't do that.
But I'm not a big fan of, if it's part of the character, just, it's fine. Give it the character, make sure that it's somewhat even with other players. But I'm not a fan of players going to take that so that they can get a magic item to start the game. But that's just me. But it's very useful, in that regard. It's a very useful one. It's similar to some of that other things that you'd have in some of the other setting books, where there's an edge that's like chromed up and stuff like that.
Yeah,
where
I think we'll see one in Sci-Fi that's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you get some extra cash. This one's specifically for a magic item. It's not for like spending on a variety of things. It's specifically for a magic item. But so my how I think of it, things set aside, it's a good edge. Novice, you get something valuable, much more valuable than the
rich or very rich.
Rich or very rich, right? So
Yeah, I mean, so this is fantasy, right? I think when we see in sci-fi, it's much better because there's just equipment, right? Sci-fi, cyberpunk, like equipment's a much bigger deal, and you can get more stuff. Now, this is very specific to a magic item. I will say that, still though, it definitely there's a thing that rubs me the wrong way, Carl, of like, I take an edge to get something that could be lost, right? Now, they do say that if it's lost, there's an adventure, like something that happens. So hopefully your game master is not just such a hard ass where they're like, oh, it's just gone. It's done, right? You're like, no, it actually means something to me. I still think when we're talking about, let's look at this like optimizationally, right? We're just going to look pure mechanics. Let's strip away the flavor. Let's strip away all the other stuff. 10,000 gold pieces is roughly equivalent when we're talking about the like magic items to an edge. That's just what it is. So like here as an example, I have to... Here is an example, is just one, the bracelet of Danger Sense, right? It's $9,000 or 9,000 gold, and it gives you the Danger Sense edge. So when you look through the kind of magic items, 10,000 is roughly the kind of power of an edge. So that in that case, it's not that good. Like why, besides the flavor of it, right? You could just take the Danger Sense edge, right? And that you won't ever lose it. I will say though, where this is the best use of this, by far, is for a weapon. So when we look at magic weapons in the fantasy book, here we go. There's all these different roles. You can just basically choose whatever weapon you want. And then if we see here, the +2 fighting damage die and the +2 fighting and a damage die increase 1 step is 10,000 gold pieces. So you're getting the full value from that for your weapon. So you have like your this magical sword or whatever that was passed down from your parents or whatever, and it's +2 fighting and a damage die increase is a really, really, really good, right? So I think if you are looking at this, right, of course, when we talk about optimization, we're saying, if you want the flavor, go ahead. Savage Worlds is very forgiving. You're always going to be, unless you're like really did a bad job, you're generally going to be effective at one or two things, right? Even if you kind of don't care about optimization at all. And flavor ultimately it's what's important. You want to like your character. But if we are, you can kind of balance flavor and optimization. So if you just really wanted like that bracer of Danger Sense because it's cool or whatever, then like, sure, take it. But as far as like, this really works in my mind, because it's something that could be lost, that the weapon here is where you get the biggest bonus, right, Carl? Like, as you can see, that's a really, really good, compared to the trademark weapon, this is really, really good, right?
Right.
You're starting with just this badass sword, and if you're a fighter, right, combat characters, it's all about the weapon. It's just all about the weapon, right? Getting a big badass weapon, like, we'll talk about this in 1 second when we get to the sci-fi edges, but yeah, it's all about that weapon, right? So, I don't know, I still place this, it's better than Rich and Very Rich, I think. There can be cool stuff behind it, like maybe your game master, so maybe it powers up at some point, or there's some backstory about this, like they're discovering. So there's some cool like stuff that like can create a backstory, right? Little element here, like a hook, right, Carl?
Sure.
For me, this lands at C just because of the weapon. Honestly, I don't think it's, even though it's strong, like this is a strong option, it's still ultimately an item that can be lost. I don't know. Maybe it could be B. What do you think, Carl?
I think a C, only because, like you said, it can be lost, and it does tempt the game master to, things like when you guys are like right now in the campaign, you're going to a lot of situations where your weapons aren't allowed, or they're being, this is a science fiction game, and they're being taken from you, and you may not have them. You've lost something that made you. It's like no other time do you like lose an edge. Right.
That's true too. Like even beyond just losing it, like, or somebody stole it, like if there's anti-magic field, or you're going into the king's chamber and they're like no magic items at all, not just weapons, like no magic items. You can't wear that obviously magic crown on your head, right? That is a good point too, that it can be taken away. So even if it like you did something good, it can still be taken away. Okay, cool.
Okay, very cool. All right.
I think that's the end of
Fantasy Companion.
Fantasy. Let's go right to sci-fi. Here's another one, man. Oh boy. Kind of similar to, honestly, the Chosen One. You have Captain. Now you need Command, which is weird to me. Again, Command is weird because Command really is not about. I mean, I guess it's like tactics, but you really don't get any bonuses for like when you're in ship-to-ship combat. But whatever, it's fine. It makes sense thematically, I guess. A piling of D8. So you take this edge. You get your own light cargo hauler or scout ship of your very own. You may have inherited, stolen it, blah, blah, blah. And you're responsible for maintenance, fuel, hiring crew, charters, all that stuff. It lets you start with a campaign with a starship large enough to accommodate your party, usually a multi-purpose transport. Make sure you talk this over with your GM. Yeah, this is funny that this is the only one that says that. Like, Rich, Chosen One, those should say that too, but it says it here, which is like, I think we talked about this in our sci-fi overview. Like, it's just so weird. Like, I guess it's good that it's here, Carl, but like, when is this a good option? Like, normally, if you're in a game that's going to be planet hopping, the game master should give you a ship at some point, or allow you to have a ship, or you start with a ship, or you have a quest where you get a ship, right? If it's essential to the campaign, that's something that the game master is going to provide. If it's not essential to the campaign, you probably aren't going to hardly get any use out of it, right? Generally.
Well, yeah, and you're not going to say to a player while they're making their session zeros, like, oh, what do you guys have to blow an edge so that you can actually have the spaceship that's necessary for us to actually do what we need to do in the campaign? So...
Yeah, like if you're in a game that just takes place on a planet, right? And then, it could be useful, right? That's the only time that I think that maybe, okay, if you have a ship, then occasionally if you need to go to the moon or something, or you need to hop around. So it's just weird, right? It's just so weird. Like, it's such a just, why did they think this was needed? I don't know. I'm just kind of at a loss, right, Carl? But I will say, as far as what you get, and, we've looked at Rich, we've looked at Very Rich, we've looked at Heirloom, we'll look at another one after this in Sci-Fi. But as far as an edge being worth money, I mean, okay. So they say, yeah, you probably have one of these. Look at the cost. That's $10.4 million, right? So an edge, and even though you have to pay for maintenance and crew costs, you're still getting $10 million plus. I mean, that is insane, right?
And you also get the issue of now you have a player who's the owner of the shared resource versus it being a party thing. Now it's a my thing, and you're just hanging along on my thing, and then
I'm the captain, I'm in charge, I'm the leader. So there is that dynamic, which in some games that can be fine, but I think it's very, very tricky. Like, even in my campaign that I'm running, where the players have a ship, they kind of all got it together. I worked it out in the kind of organization they're in, that like they all own it. While there's like a battle captain, there's not a person who's in charge, because even if they're not always in space, it might still lead into like, oh, that person's the captain, much like Chosen One, right? They're kind of the main character of the story, which is just something that I personally, it sometimes can be fine, like if you're in Kingmaker, right, or whatever, but it's just fraught with landmines, role-playing landmines, campaign landmines, something that you have to long and hard think about, do I want this dynamic, right, Carl? Like,
right.
So... I don't know. This is probably the hardest one of all, because while we have a lot of problems with it even existing, I think there can be cases where it's good. It's still $10 million.
You get a $10 million ship. Like, you get a free ship.
There's nothing saying you can't get this and then sell it, I guess, if you really want to be a grobnard about it, right? But I don't know. What do you think? D or C? Like, I really don't know. It's almost off the map. What do you think?
It's hard to characterize it. It's like defining it's like an edge that defines the fundamental concepts of a campaign.
Yes.
So it's a weird one. But
I think I'll say, like, I think, I don't know, man.
Call it C and
put
move
into
on
C
with our
or
lives.
on the bar, because if you're in a game that's like on a planet and most of the game is just taking place on the planet, like that's the game master set it up, but you're like, I have a ship, like I just have a ship, I'm usually shipping around, but we're doing all the stuff on the planet, it sometimes comes in use, right? In that case, you might even want to stick to, but like maybe you can call it in for like bombing runs, I guess, I don't know. So I mean, even if you go for like a smaller like scout vessel, right, there is a place for it kind of in the right type of game where all those problems don't exist. If it's like if they're never going to be like, well, we're not really part of the crew, it's just something, they just have this, right?
Right. Okay.
So I don't know. What do you think, D or C? Then I
call it a C.
Kind of want to put it.
Call it a C, and then we'll move on. And,
put it here.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on, but with all those caveats, yeah. Put it there. All right. Okay, so real quick, I want to talk about favorite terrain with Sci-Fi, because that is also in the Sci-Fi book. While we talked about it, in this one, while it's almost a little bit crazier because, who knows what planet you're getting to. It's not like where in a fantasy game you have, right, like, we'll go to the forest, we'll go to the plains. In this, like, the game might just take place in the Arctic, it might take place underground, right? If you're in a sci-fi game, unless you're like on a planet that's Star Wars, so it's like desert planet, right? You're going to be going to a lot of different environments. But in this case, there's two really, really key ones that I want to point out. Number one is urban, which then includes space station and vehicle interiors. So if you're doing a lot of stuff like fighting in space stations, in habs, right? People bored or you're bored, this can be really, really good. Also space, which then this becomes, even though the survival D6 becomes weird to me, but then this becomes a really good one for the pilot. If you're in a game where you want to take ace, right, because you think there's going to be spaceship combat, then this becomes a really interesting one to take if you're the pilot. Where so then you're getting, notice rolls are good, but then you're just getting this extra initiative card, right, in these chase battles. Where because you're the pilot, you're the one that the whole team goes off of, right?
I'm not sure I agree with your interpretation, but okay.
Oh, you don't? I mean, what else?
I read this as
that's my
your favorite
interpretation.
terrain would be if you were in a spacesuit in space, doing things in space as a character, versus you're in a ship driving a ship that's going around in space. So my interpretation's a little bit different than yours.
No, that's true. I guess that is a good point. So. I just think that it was worth bringing up here that it's almost worse in sci-fi, unless you choose urban, honestly. Like, urban is just a really good one to choose. And then space, whether your game master allows it or not, I guess could be an issue. So I just wanted to call it out. Almost a worse rating, except for urban, which is almost better because of that. Because, in our sci-fi game, we're spending a lot of time in space stations, and we've had people board us. We've boarded other ships, right? That would be very, very, very helpful to have. So, yeah. Okay.
And no one's
Let's
taken
actually talk
it yet.
about the next one.
Okay.
Here we go.
Geared up. So this goes. We've talked already around this in different ways with different ones. I mean, basically, what this does is give you 10 times the starting funds. So basically, $10,000 that you can spend on cyberware and robotic mods.
No, it's anything. It's anything, and then they just call out that they're already installed if it's cyberware or robotic mods.
Oh,
I just didn't post the whole thing. Yeah.
I always get that mixed up because everybody usually spends it when they want to be chromed up. That's usually when people spend it. So I kind of got myself a little confused there for a second. So
it's all good. Yeah.
So I mean,
go on.
It's a money edge, right? I mean, it's a money edge.
Yes, it's a money edge. I'll say, but here we go. But optimizationally, this one is the best of all of them, in my opinion, because science fiction has so much gear. It has cybernetics. It has, if you're a robot, you need mods. Mainly if cyberware and robotics, this is where it's great because you're getting cyberware. It's installed correctly. You don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to roll anything if that's the case, and you're never gonna lose it probably, right? It's just part of your character. And you could say, well, I could just buy cyberware, but if you want to be chromed up, you might just be buying cyberware later anyways and investing in, the edges that give you more strain or vigor and spirit or whatever. So this one's really, really good. And because it's multiplying off of 1,000, which is the normal kind of start for a science fiction game, that 10,000 will get you some pretty good cyberware. Yeah. And if you're a robot, this is almost essential because you just really need those mods. And even if you're not those, though, like these can get you so one of our characters in our sci-fi game, she's a rock person that took this, and she didn't even use all the money, but she still started with ridiculous weapons. I mean, she started with a laser Gatling gun that had mods on it, right? Which just kills, just absolutely thrashes, right, Carl? So
which in hindsight, I should not let her have. But anyway, go ahead.
I mean, but there's places where she can't have it. I mean, it's whatever. But sure. But so this, to me, this is the best one out of all of them, just because of the nature of the science fiction book, right? Because cybernetics exists, because you can, get some really, really badass weapons and, a lot of weapons if that's your thing, right? In this case, even though you're getting money, there's just so much stuff to buy and invest in. if you have a spaceship, you could just save your money. You might just be saving money to get money for your spaceship, right? So this just becomes important that you don't have to then spend that $8,000 on a crazy gun and armor or whatever, right? And getting cybernetics immediately can be a big thing. So,
well, especially if that's your character. If that's your character's background, you need to have cybernetics to start with. Otherwise, I'm going to spend all my novice edges to try to become what I was going to be in the first place. So yeah, it's absolutely necessary for that kind of character.
Yes, and while cybernetics could I don't have this. Let's see, do I have the sci-fi book open? Yeah, I do. So I think some cybernetics for 5,000 could technically. Let me see. Let's actually look from an optimization standpoint. So attribute increase costs 5,000, right? So even though there is strain, but that half of an edge gives you a full edge, right? If you're just looking at it from that standpoint, right? You can get 2 attribute increases for 1 edge, right? That's a good bonus. Now, again, it is gear, so there's downsides. I don't think this is an A, but for me, this is definitely a B. And it can be very strong in the right circumstances, right? Don't get us wrong. This could be A level of power, but I think it's a B. You think it's B?
Yeah, I totally think it's a B.
Okay. All right, let's put it here. Okay, we only got 2 more to go. 2 more to go.
And we're running super long. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us.
Actually, no, 1 more. I'm bad. This is the last one. Here we go. All right. Heavy, super heavy G Worlder. Now, this is one of 3 or technically 4 edges that half of them give you that, you treat your strength as 1 higher for encumbrance and minimum strength. Now, I did talk about this a lot with Brawny. Obviously, Brawny is an A rank edge. The other ones are Soldier, and then the other. I'll talk about the 4th one a little in a second. But so those are the other 2 that are kind of the main ones. Those are technically better. The other half is much better. The bonus for this is that it doesn't have any requirements. So those both require you to have a strength of a D6. So if you're a character who just doesn't care about your strength at all, you're not going to do melee, right? Then this one, if you just want the encumbrance increase, this one, you don't have to spend strength to get strength, if that makes sense, Carl.
Right.
But I will say, though, that the other half of this is you get double normal jumping distances, which is just what? I mean... So, even in the case that you're I don't care about melee, right? I just want to have some better weapon and better armor, right? D6 armor and D6 weapon, right? Honestly, it's still hard-pressed to think that a strength of a D6 is not better than this, right? Because you're taking this in place of an attribute increase at character creation, right? So, obviously, you would not make sense for you to take this later under very extreme circumstances. So, I mean, what does strength give you besides melee damage? I mean, it does... give you there are strength rolls, right? There's literally if you need to push a door open, it's one of the few attributes that is an active skill roll. Suede went away from that generally, that it's always skills and attributes are the defense. But in strength's case, you can use strength to push a door open or pull on something, right? That's a strength roll. And they talk about with support, right? Everybody can support with strength. Strength can also be used for opposing, right? If a character has the brute edge and they're using strength against you, athletics, that could be a strength resisting, right? So there is cases where that could be the case. So I don't know. Even if you don't want to do melee, it still thinks the jumping distances thing is just so minor. Here is jumping. Oh, where'd it go? Here we go. Here's jumping, Carl. Right? You can jump 1 inch horizontally or 0.5 vertically, double the numbers if you can run at least 2 inches. And then if you do an athletics roll, you can increase it again. So, it can give you a bigger increase, but you can't exceed your pace. So if you don't take fleet-footed and you're just a 6-inch person, right? You're talking about 2 and then times 2, 4, 5. You're still not getting crazy distances, right? No. That's more than your pace. I mean, the funny thing is, maybe in a game that had low powers or no powers, this would be better because there's if your game master likes chasms and things, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. But then there's also technology that can do this stuff. So I don't know. What do you think? I think this is almost a flavor choice. This is really a flavor choice.
It is a flavor choice. It really is. it doesn't bring a lot to the table. I don't know what more to say than what you've already said. It doesn't bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, I mean, so the fourth one is the is actually embedded in the Gravlock edge, which is what I've taken for in Carl's game. Which, if you can take it, is just a way better version. I mean, obviously you're getting the encumbrance stuff, but you're also getting a full arcane background. That's awesome. So, yeah, I mean it's D, right? It's D.
Yeah, I agree. D.
Okay, here we go.
And all right. That's a lot. So I got the chart up, and everybody can see. So S tier, arcane background, and Elan. A tier, we got alertness, brawny, charismatic, Elan, again luck and great luck. B, ambidextrous, famous, fleet-footed, quick, geared up. C, more than I want to read.
Whole bunch of stuff. Yeah.
And then D, our poor people who are aristocratic, famous, or rich, nobody cares, are down in the D category.
Yeah. And I want to just say it again. Like, while most of them are in C, I mean, again, these are background edges, so they're kind of all different types of edges. This doesn't mean that they're bad, right? Some of these can be very powerful under the right circumstances. You just have to kind of think about it more, and there's just a lot more specifics to think about. So when you look at this, it's not like we're like, oh, Savage World sucks. Like, look at all these garbage edges. Like, just not at all the case. Not at all the case. No, that's not what we mean.
It means C means average, right? They're average. They're good in certain niche situations, and other situations are not great.
A lot of stipulations.
They're average.
Sure.
Right? So, okay. All right, well, everyone, this was Eric and Carl. We just went through all the background edges, including in the Fantasy Companion and the Science Fiction Companion. So I'm glad you stuck with us. We got through them all. We'll continue to look at bringing.
Next will be combat. Yeah, I mean,
right? More edges. That one will be a big one. We'll have to check ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and we'll see when we get around to doing that. Again, this is Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles. Do the stuff. Thank you so much for being there with us and enjoying the show. And we'll just keep doing it. And 2025 will be the year of talking edges, I guess. So,
all right.
Talk to you later.
Happy gaming.
Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World, Benny, enhance my play.